Hello everyone, I hope you are all well. I hope you can all hear me as well. Please let me know in the chat how you are, how your week is going and whether or not you can hear me. Bonjour et bienvenue à ce webinaire ouvert à tous. Avant de commencer, pour ceux qui ne nous connaissent pas, je m'appelle Cécilia, je suis une professeure d'anglais native et le Cercle des langues est une école d'anglais en ligne pour les adultes. Nous proposons des formations d'anglais sur mesure en fonction de vos objectifs, de votre niveau et de votre budget. Et la bonne nouvelle, c'est que nos formations sont finançables par CPF. So now I will return to English. Hello, Eric. Hello, Graziella. Hello, Akil. Welcome, everybody. So today, I'm very glad you can all hear me. Today, we are going to be covering a very important business English topic, which is how to master politeness at work. Now, going into a different cultural environment than perhaps you're used to, it can sometimes be difficult to know how to communicate what you're trying to say in the most polite way. But of course, politeness is very important. It's crucial for making sure people take you seriously and for making sure that people want to work with you. Of course, if you are friendly and polite, then you will be a pleasant person to be around. And this is what most people look for when they're looking for people to work with. So, of course, in England, the English are known for being very polite, but every culture has a different way of expressing politeness. Different Anglophone cultures have different ways of expressing politeness. So today we're going to have a look at some of the ways you can express politeness in English. And we are going to be dividing the webinar today into 3 parts. So in the first part, we will be looking at making polite requests. In part 2, we will be looking at saying no in a diplomatic way. And in part 3, we will be having a look at making helpful suggestions. So let's get started. So we will be going on to first making polite requests. Now, when we think about making requests, there are big requests and there are small requests. Of course, a request is asking for something. Maybe you are asking someone to do something. So a big request might be something like asking someone to pay for half of your house if you're buying a house. And the small request is asking someone to pay for half of your lunch, maybe. One is a very big ask, you're asking them for a lot of money, and one is much smaller. So the way you approach a big request and a small request are going to be different because, of course, you're infringing more on someone if you are making a big request. Whereas with a small request, it's just something small. You don't need to counteract the request with so much politeness. So first, we're going to be looking at small requests. Maybe you're asking someone to quickly send you an email, or as I said, pay for your lunch or something like that. So to start with, we have the very simple, please, could you? Now, this could form, that modal verb is, of course, very polite, more polite than saying, please, can you? Although please, can you can still work for a small request. And of course, this please is polite too. You are asking them with the please to do something. So that's expressing politeness. Then we also have, do you think you could? So of course, this is a bit of a funny question because if you say to someone, do you think you could close the door? You're not really asking, do you think you're able to close the door? Of course, this is just a way of passing the option on to them. Are you able to close the door for me? And as a polite way of making a request. We also have, would you mind? Now, of course, then you're very much taking into consideration how they are feeling. And this is very polite. You're saying, I don't want to ask you to do something that you don't want to do. So would you mind? Is it okay with you if you do this? So would you mind closing the door, please? Then we have, could you do me a favor? And so a favor is when you do something to help someone out. So if you say, could you do me a favor and send the names of all the teachers we're working with. That's a small favor you're asking someone to do. It might not take very long, but you're still acknowledging that they are doing something to help you out. And finally, we have, if you could, that would be. So again, you're seeing this modal form, the could, would. So in this case, you're saying, if you did this, then that would be great, or whatever it would be. So if you could finish this work by Monday, that would be ideal. So ideal means optimal. Great. So now we are going to have a look at asking for some more big requests. Now, as I mentioned, when you're making a bigger request, you're going to want to soften what you're saying. So you often begin with an introductory phrase that doesn't actually ask the question. It just introduces it in a polite way. And sometimes across cultures, if you're not used to this sort of English way of attaching this just politeness, purely polite addition to the question, it can sound a bit strange. So of course, if you say, I wanted to ask if, the person already knows you wanted to ask, that is why you are asking them. That's why you're asking them, but you just add it on as a polite way of introducing the question. So you could say, I wanted to ask if it was okay for me to take a day off tomorrow. If you are asking for maybe a slightly bigger request at work. Similarly with I was wondering if, we can also use it in the just the simple past tense. I wondered if the report was ready, for instance. This is just a slightly more gentle way of asking a question. Of course, that's not really a request, but I was wondering if you could have the report finished by tomorrow. That would be a request. Now we have I was hoping. Of course, if you are hoping for something, you're wanting it to happen. So you're letting them know what you would like to happen before you've actually asked the question. So you could say, I was hoping you could come to my office before the end of the day. That's again not a huge request, but it can be used. It can be used for both a small and a large request. Then we can have, I would be very grateful if. Now, grateful, of course, this is expressing that you would be giving thanks to them if they did something. So thinking of a very big request, you could say, I would be very grateful if you could finish the entire project by the end of the week. Now that might be a big request, but you've expressed how grateful you would be, so it perhaps seems a little bit less demanding. And then finally, do you think? So do you think you could? Do you think we could? Do you think you could? Do you think you could find me somewhere to stay while I'm on my business trip, for instance? So now we are going to have a quick look back at what we have learned. So first of all, can you fill in the gap of this phrase? Could you do me a brilliant favor? So I see all of you have written favor with an O. You can spell favor with just an O. That's the American spelling. And then the British English spelling is favor with a U. And I will write that in the chat. So favor spelt like that. But brilliant, that is the correct answer. Favor. And now, please form a sentence with this phrase. Now, this doesn't have a right or a wrong answer. I'm just asking you to use a sentence you've just learned or a phrase that you've just learned and put it into practice. Maybe you could give... Brilliant, Loyan. Everyone go ahead. Since there's no right or wrong answer, it's not about who can get there first. Just go ahead and practice. Brilliant. Yes, these sentences are all looking great. Graziella, we would usually say more naturally if Trish is a person, you would say if you could give me Trish's files, but correct me, maybe Trish is not a person. So that wouldn't sound so natural after all. So Eric, here we would say if you could provide me with this report, provide me with, or provide this report to me, but just provide me, we need something in addition to that. We can't just provide someone something, you're providing the report to me. If you could bring me a coffee, that would be great. Brilliant. You're welcome, Graziella. If you could finish it tonight, that would be perfect. If you could send me the file by mail, that would be great. If you could be here at 8, that would be nice. Exactly. So you've all got the idea. The important thing is that you follow could with a main verb, and we don't change the verb depending on who the person is. So we always keep it in its base form. So if you could finish, if he could finish, if they could finish, it always stays the same. And then we can follow that would be with an adjective. That would be great. That would be awesome. That would be fabulous. Brilliant. So this example, if you could finish it by Monday, that would be amazing. Brilliant, everyone. So now we're going to look at saying no. So saying no can be quite difficult. No worries, Evelyn. Hello. It's not nice to disappoint people. It's really not nice to leave people feeling rejected. And so you need to be careful when you're saying no to make sure that you do it in a very respectful and tactful way. So one situation where you might end up needing to say no is to an invitation. If someone invites you to something, perhaps you're busy, or maybe you just don't want to go, whatever the reason, you want to decline politely. So there are lots of different phrases we can use. You'll see this word but coming up. This comes up quite a lot when it comes to politeness because you are introducing something that you acknowledge is the case, but then you are backtracking, you're going back on it because you actually are going to need to say no. So I'm really sorry, but of course, sorry, it means in this case that you are upset, potentially also that you are apologizing to them for the fact you will not be able to come. I'm really sorry, but I can't come on Friday because I already have another dinner planned. That would be an example. And then I would have loved to. Of course, this would have loved is putting it into a hypothetical. You're saying, I would have loved to if I was able to, but I am not. So I would have loved to participate in this event, but unfortunately I am busy. Then again, with an invitation, of course, you want to show that you are grateful. Of course, if someone has thought to invite you, that's very kind of them. So you can say, thank you for your invitation. But again, this is very nice and polite, a very standard way to reply to an invitation. Then that's very kind, but similarly to the above, you're acknowledging how grateful you are that they've thought of you, that they've invited you. That's very kind, but I am away on business that weekend. Then we have that sounds, but. Now, of course, you can put whatever adjective in here you want, depending on the situation. So that sounds interesting. That sounds fun. That sounds, you can even say like something I would really enjoy if you wanted to make it a little bit more complex. That sounds like it will be really interesting, but I won't be able to attend. And then these two These two words, unfortunately and sadly, they can be used in many, many different situations just to introduce something that you're sad about or that you wish maybe could be another way. So unfortunately, I can't come to the meeting today as I am off work sick. Or sadly, I won't be able to attend the networking event because I have to finish off a report. So those are some ways to decline an invitation. Now we're going to look at saying no to an idea. So you can't always agree with everything that people say, and it makes for a lively working environment if you are challenging people. But saying no or challenging an idea should be done in a polite way. It can come across as rude if you just immediately shut down someone's idea without much more than a simple no. People want to feel like they are being listened to, like their ideas are being heard. And so you can show, even if you're going to say no to someone's idea, you can show them that you have acknowledged what they've said, you've heard what they have said. So first, a way to acknowledge that you've listened to someone is to say, I see your point. Now this is saying, I understand what you're saying, but I don't agree, for instance. Now you'll see this note at the bottom. Each of these phrases can be followed by but or however. Some people think that however is more polite than but. If you are using it with one of these phrases, then to say but afterwards is not rude at all. Of course, with all of these, you are kind of retracting what you initially said, but it's what you have to do if you're going to at least try and be polite before, rather than just say no, which can come across as rude. So then we have, I see where you're coming from. Now this is a bit idiomatic. Where someone is coming from is the perspective or the thought process that they are coming from. That is the where. And so if you say you see where they're coming from, then you're saying, similarly to I see your point, I understand what you're saying. I understand why you've suggested this, but I still don't agree. I still don't think it's a good idea. And when we use this phrase, we always keep it in this present continuous form. I see where you're coming from. We can't say, I see where you come from. That just doesn't make sense. It's a fixed phrase in this tense. We also have, I know what you mean. This is obviously acknowledging you understand exactly what they've said, but still you disagree. I know what you mean, but I think it would be better if we put the title in big font at the top. Imagine you're doing a bit of design. I don't know. And then that may be true. So of course, sometimes people say things that are completely valid, they're true, but still you think a different course of action would be better. That may be true, but we've already spent a lot of time working on marketing and there hasn't been any progress. So I think we should change the course of action, for instance, would be a way to use that. And as I already mentioned, each of those can be followed by both but or however. Now we are going to have again a little test of knowledge. So again, this is one with no right answers. Please form a sentence with this phrase. How would you politely say no to an invitation with this phrase? Maybe you can use some personal experience. Have you had to decline an invitation? I'm sure you have lots of invitations at the moment, given how everything is opening up in France. So maybe you've been invited to a business lunch or a business dinner or an event at work and you haven't been able to make it. Brilliant. So that sounds fun, but I can't come. That sounds great, but I'm not available. Yeah, so you can say that sounds good. I don't feel it. We wouldn't say that, Christelle. We would say I'm not feeling it. But that's very, very colloquial language to say you're feeling something or not feeling it. So I would avoid maybe using that in a business context. It's much more colloquial to be maybe used between your friends. That sounds fun, but I'm not free. That sounds great, but I won't be able to attend. Brilliant. That sounds great, but I'm sick. Of course, very unfortunate if you're having to miss out on a fun event if you're unwell. That sounds interesting, but I won't be able to attend. That sounds like a good idea, but I think we should do something else. Exactly. So we can even use this phrase to say no to an idea as well. So it's a pretty versatile one. Great, everyone. So yes, this example is, that sounds interesting, but I'm currently working on another project. Sometimes at work, you have to say no to things that do sound very interesting, but of course you can't we use a phrase which is to spread yourself too thin. If you spread yourself too thin, that means you agree to lots of different things and you aren't able to do any of them properly because you have given yourself too much to do. So in order to not spread yourself too thin, sometimes you have to say no to maybe participating in a project or an event or something like that. So now we are going to try and finish the phrase that is used to politely say no to an idea. Please go ahead and write in the chat what the end of this phrase is. Brilliant, Christelle. Yes, you've all got it. So I can see where you are coming from. And of course, you can shorten it to your if you like. I can see where you are coming from. Excellent. So now we're going to look at making suggestions. Of course, you have lots of great ideas and you want to be able to share them, but not everyone likes being told what to do. Not everyone likes, not everyone likes feeling like they haven't been able to come up with their own way of doing things. So when you're making suggestions, you need to do it in a way that doesn't make people feel like they're being ordered around or being told what to do in a very strict way. So first, we can look at suggesting ideas. So these are more gentle ways to suggest ideas. So have you considered? This is something we'll see, that presenting things as a question is a way of being polite, making it sound a little bit less forceful. Of course, if you just tell someone something, they might feel like that's a little bit controlling. But if you ask them, you're making them feel like they're having an active role in coming to the decision and having an active role in a conversation rather than just a one-way street being told what to do. So have you considered looking at the problem from this angle? That's what you could say. You're making the suggestion that maybe they should think about something in a different way. Have you considered? Then maybe we could. Again, we have that could form. Maybe we could try again next week. You're making another suggestion, but it's just with the maybe. Of course, you're not making it sound like it's something they have to do. You're just gently suggesting it. I thought it might be good to. Again, this is similar to that. I was wondering if, I was hoping. You're slightly just softening it by saying, I thought it might be good to, rather than it is good to. You're just softening it a little bit like that. So I thought it might be good to go over the data analysis a second time, perhaps. And finally, how about this is again presenting a suggestion as a question. So how about we go out for a work dinner on Thursday instead of Friday? You're presenting it as a question. You're not telling anyone what they need to do, but you're still able to get your suggestion across. Now, another strategy we use to sound more polite, aside from just these general introductory questions, is to use what are called negative questions. So If we take a direct statement, we should tell James that he made a mistake. That sounds clear. Of course, it's an assertion, it's a statement. In order to make that sound a little more gentle, you can turn it into a question. Now, it's called a negative question because this modal should is being turned into a negative, so from should to shouldn't. So we take from the sentence, we should tell James that he made a mistake, turning it into a question. We have, shouldn't we tell James that he made a mistake? Now, again, this makes it feel like a more gentle suggestion. You're not saying exactly what you should do. You're presenting it as an option. You're asking for feedback from the other person, even though you already know the answer because you're saying, shouldn't we? So you're saying, obviously, we should. So you're not really asking for an answer. Maybe you are asking for an answer, but you're presenting the question in a way that makes it clear already what you think. So you can see in the formation that the important things to remember are that you are putting the modal verb in the negative. So if it's should, it goes to shouldn't. If it's would, it goes to wouldn't, could, couldn't. And then the subject of the verb and the modal go in the opposite order. So in the statement, we have the subject, we, and then the modal, should. And in the question, we have the shouldn't first, and then we, inverted, second. So then again, this term, softening the blow. Of course, you're not necessarily going to be giving big blows at work, but softening the blow means to just let someone down a bit more lightly. So if you're maybe introducing an idea, or if you're telling someone something, these words, soften the blow, that's kind of an idiomatic phrase to say, but you are going to be making it sound more gentle. How about using, I'm just looking at your question, Eric, how about using shall instead of shouldn't? So yes, exactly, you can say, shall we tell James he made a mistake? Exactly, in that case, it's not a negative question, but it's still a question, and presenting the suggestion as a question will always just sound a little bit more of a lighter touch. So saying, shall we tell James he made a mistake would work perfectly fine. So yes, we have these words. We have quite. So perhaps you'll say, I didn't understand that. That might sound a little bit like, excuse me, I didn't understand that. But if you add a quite, it goes to, I didn't quite understand that. It sounds more gentle. Perhaps this is a little bit funny because it doesn't really make that big of a difference. But when you're trying to be polite, I definitely notice myself doing it. When I'm trying to be polite, I add these little words which just make a statement feel a little bit less strong. You're just making it sound less strong. So a bit is another one. We can say, instead of I'm going to be late, you might say I'm going to be a bit late. Now this is just to say that, don't worry, I'm not going to be very, very late, just a bit. Now slight, this is saying it's very small. Instead of saying I'm very concerned about your work, or I'm concerned about your work, you might say I have a slight concern about your work. Again, another word to soften the blow. And finally, just. So this is like I'm just going to have another look at the email before I give you an answer. It's just saying I'm just going to do this. You're trying to make what you're doing seem smaller. I'm just going to have a look at the email. And this makes what you're saying sound more gentle, more polite. So now let's have a look at some little quiz questions. Can you turn these two sentences, these two statements, into negative questions? So the first one is, they would work better by themselves. The second, you should check with your manager first. Now, I don't know if you think these sound like strong statements. They're not particularly, but you could still make them even more polite by using that question form. Great. So wouldn't they work better by themselves? And then for the second, shouldn't you check with your manager first? Exactly. Brilliant. So you've all got the hang of turning a statement into a negative question. So wouldn't they work better by themselves, and shouldn't you check with your manager first? Now, please complete this sentence with a word that makes this, the sentence a little bit softer, that softens the blow. So there is a problem with the new logo design. Excellent. So it is indeed slight. There is a slight problem with the new logo design. Brilliant. So yeah, well done, everyone. That brings us to the end of today's webinar. I hope you feel like you've learned something, that you're a bit better equipped to handle politeness in the workplace in English. Do let me know if you have any final questions in the chat. Great, you're very welcome. So yeah, if no one has any final questions, could you have said just instead of slight? So you wouldn't, in that situation, you couldn't have said there is a just problem with the new logo design. You would have to use slight in this situation, because you're just modifying the noun, problem, whereas just is not in this context an adjective, so it wouldn't work. Great. So for the replay, yes, there will be a replay on YouTube in the next couple of days if you want to look at it again. Si ce webinaire vous a plu et que vous souhaitez approfondir votre pratique de l'anglais, n'hésitez pas à faire une demande d'information sur notre site internet. Nous serons heureux de vous présenter nos formations en détail et même de vous proposer un test de niveau gratuit à l'oral avec un de nos professeurs. So yes, do go ahead and come and talk to us if you'd like to continue learning English. And thank you all so much again for coming. Take care and have a lovely week. Bye-bye.